Welcome to the deep dive. If you're a retiree living on a fixed pension, you know that constant pressure. Inflation just keeps climbing, and it feels like your financial ground is always shifting.
It's a real and valid anxiety for so many people.
Absolutely. So today, our mission is to turn that anxiety into action. We've gone through a pile of expert guides and strategies to create a clear roadmap, one that's designed to put you firmly back in control.
And control is the key word there. We really need to shift the mindset from the get-go. Budgeting, especially on a tight income, isn't about restriction. It's not a punishment.
Empowerment.
It is absolute empowerment. Think of your budget as a financial map. It doesn't tell you where you can't go. It shows you the best, safest route to get to where you want to be, which is security.
Okay, let's unpack this. We've structured this deep dive into 4 basic steps. First, we're going to face reality, what's coming in, what's going out. No more guesswork. Second, we'll build a budget structure that actually works for a lower income. Third, and this is the really practical part, we'll get into strategic cost cutting without, sacrificing your quality of life.
Which is critical.
And finally, we'll talk about building a sustainable future. So let's start at the beginning. Step 1. Understanding your financial reality.
You have to. You can't solve a problem until you can define it. And the very first thing for anyone listening is to just stop guessing. Start knowing.
And that means a full income assessment, right? Every single penny.
Every single penny. And you need to list it all out. What's the source? What's the exact amount? And this is important. When does it arrive in your account?
The timing matters.
The timing is everything for cash flow. So
Yeah.
let's take a common example we saw in the research. You might have your state pension, say £800, that lands on the 1st of the month.
Okay.
Then maybe a small private pension, £400 on the 15th. Maybe you have a little rental income, £150, that comes in on the 5th.
So you write all that down.
You write it down. And now you have a concrete number. In this case, £1,350. That's your anchor. That's the reality you're working with.
Once you've got that income number locked in, then comes the other side of the coin, which can be a bit more painful, tracking expenses.
It can be, but it's where you find all the power.
And the sources say to categorize everything. We're talking 3 main buckets here. First, your essentials. That's housing, food, utilities, healthcare, the non-negotiables. Second, discretionary. This is the stuff that makes life enjoyable. Eating out, hobbies, subscriptions. And then third, the irregular expenses, the ones that sneak up on you.
Ugh, the annual car insurance bill.
Exactly. Or holiday gifts. Things you know are coming, but, forget to plan for.
And can I add a crucial detail there? Something we saw that makes a huge difference.
Please.
Always include a small miscellaneous category, a buffer. It doesn't have to be big, maybe 20 pounds or 30 pounds a month.
For what exactly?
For life. For the unexpected tube of toothpaste, the birthday card you forgot. It's a psychological safety net. It stops a tiny, unplanned expense from derailing your entire budget and making you feel like you've failed.
That makes so much sense. It gives you a bit of breathing room. So once you have these lists, the next step is finding what the sources call money leaks.
Yes. Money leaks are just inefficiencies. They're dangerous because they're small. You ignore them day to day.
But they add up.
They add up massively over a year. The most common ones we found were things like forgotten subscriptions, that streaming service you haven't watched in months.
Guilty.
Or inefficient utility, use old drafty windows, leaving things on standby. But the biggest, most toxic leak of all, high-interest debt, credit cards especially. They just quietly drain your income.
So the action here is to literally print out 3 months of bank statements and get a highlighter.
Yes, highlight every recurring payment that isn't a core essential and circle every single interest charge you've paid. That exercise alone can be a huge wake-up call.
And that leads us right into our second segment, building the budget structure. Now that we know the numbers, how do we organize them effectively?
It starts with one simple rule: forced prioritization. Essentials get funded first, no exceptions. And to give that some structure, we really like the 70-20-10 rule for this situation.
Now, we hear about these rules a lot. The 50-30-20 rule is probably the most famous one. Why is 70-20-10 a better fit for a retiree on a tight budget?
That's a great question, and it really gets to the heart of it. The 50-30-20 model, which is 50% for needs, 30 for wants, 20 for savings, it just assumes a higher level of disposable income.
Right. For a lot of retirees, essentials are way more than 50%.
Exactly. For someone on that £1,350 income, housing and utilities alone might be 60%. The 70-20-10 model just acknowledges that reality from the start.
So walk us through that split.
70% is for essentials and just comfortable living. That's your housing, food, transport, bills. 20% is discretionary. And I want to stress this. This isn't frivolous. This is for your quality of life. Hobbies, seeing friends, it's vital.
Prevents burnout.
It prevents burnout and isolation. And the final 10% goes to savings, paying down debt, or building that emergency fund. Now, of course, this is flexible if things are really tight. Maybe it's 80-15-5, but the principle holds.
So to make a role like that stick, you have to track consistently. What are the best tools for someone who maybe isn't super tech savvy or finds banking apps a bit much?
You need a system that creates accountability. For those who are comfortable with tech, apps like Mint or Yolt are fantastic. They link to your accounts and they do the hard work of categorizing for you. You can see at a glance where the money's going.
It visualizes the budget for you.
It does. But for anyone who prefers something more hands-on, you cannot beat the envelope system. It's been around forever because it works.
Explain that for anyone who hasn't heard of it.
It's simple. You take out your discretionary cash for the month. You put 200 pounds in an envelope marked groceries. You put 50 pounds in one marked entertainment. And when the cash in that envelope is gone,
the spending stops. Full stop.
it stops. There's no tapping a card and dealing with it later.
Yeah.
It creates a very real tactile limit.
And I imagine if you stick with any of these systems, after a few months, the patterns just jump out at you. You can finally see where those leaks really are.
It's like turning on the lights in a dark room. Suddenly you see everything clearly.
Okay, this is where things get really interesting. Segment 3. Strategic cost reduction. We have the map, now we need to find the shortcuts. How do we cut costs on the big things, housing, food, transport, without feeling like we're giving everything up?
Right, and you have to focus on the big three. You'll burn out trying to save pennies on toothpaste. You need surgical cuts on the big-ticket items.
Let's start with housing. Downsizing is always the first suggestion, but that's a massive emotional step for a retiree, leaving friends, a community.
It's a huge psychological cost, and the sources were very clear on this. Downsizing shouldn't mean isolation. If you have to move, the goal is to find a lower-cost area that still has great community links or transport back to your family.
Are there alternatives to moving?
The big one we saw highlighted was home sharing, renting out a spare room. It does two things beautifully. It generates income, turning your biggest expense into a revenue stream, and it can combat loneliness.
What about making your current home cheaper to run?
Energy efficiency is massive. Simple things like switching to LED bulbs help a little, but the big wins are from major upgrades. For instance, replacing an old G-rated gas boiler with a new efficient A-rated one can save you 200 or 300 pounds a year. Every year.
That's a permanent reduction in your overheads.
A permanent reduction.
Okay, next up is food. This feels like a constant battle against rising prices. How do you win that fight?
The key is planning. A detailed weekly meal plan that is tied directly to what's on offer at the supermarket that week, and focusing on cheap, nutritious base ingredients, vegetables, beans, grains, instead of expensive, processed, ready meals.
Is there a specific saving tip that stood out?
Yes. One analysis showed that just switching from branded non-perishables, like, say, the famous brand of baked beans or pasta, to a good quality supermarket-owned brand can save over 50 pounds a year on just one item.
On one item.
So apply that across your whole pantry. You're freeing up serious cash without really sacrificing anything.
That's a mindset shift. Brand loyalty has to go out the window. Now, what about transportation? For someone who relies on a car or public transport.
With a car, it's about efficiency. Group all your errands into 1 or 2 trips a week to save on fuel. For public transit, you absolutely must investigate any reduced fare or free travel passes available to retirees in your local area. So many people are entitled to them and just don't claim them.
Which brings us to a really important point. Leveraging external support. It can feel difficult to ask for help, but these benefits exist for a reason.
They absolutely do. We have to remove the stigma. You've paid into the system your whole life. These programs are in place to provide security. You should use them.
So what should people be actively looking for?
Check for any supplementary income programs if your pension is below a certain level. Look for energy and utility subsidies, grants for home insulation, and definitely look at healthcare benefits, prescription prepayment, help with dental and eye care. You might be surprised what you're eligible for.
And what's the big red flag here, the caution we need to add?
The caution is to be hyper-aware of scams. Retirees are a major target. Never, ever share your personal or bank details from an unsolicited phone call or email promising some new benefit.
So always verify.
Always go to the official government website or a trusted charity yourself. Be proactive, but be careful.
Okay, let's move to our final segment, building a sustainable future. This is about more than just getting through the month. It's about resilience. How do we set goals for that?
You need to tier them. Short-term goals for the next 1 to 6 months are about getting quick wins. Track your spending, cut those subscriptions, build momentum.
Okay.
Medium term, say 6 to 12 months, is about building your foundation. That's when you really focus on creating that initial emergency fund. And your long-term goals, looking 1 to 5 years ahead, are about capital preservation, thinking about legacy or major medical costs.
Let's talk about that emergency fund. It feels impossible for many. What's a realistic first target?
Don't aim for the full 6 months right away. That's too daunting. Aim for a quick win, 500 pounds, then 1,000 pounds. That amount is enough to cover a broken washing machine or a surprise bill without derailing you. It builds confidence. Then you work your way up to the 3 to 6 months of essential expenses.
And what if someone has high-interest debt? Does that come before the emergency fund?
Yes. Paying off high-interest debt is one of the best investments you can possibly make. The sources had a great example. Paying off a 3,000-pound credit card at 20% interest instantly frees up hundreds of pounds a year. That's guaranteed money back in your pocket.
For any actual investments, what's the mantra? It must be safety first.
Preservation is everything when you're not earning anymore. You're not trying to get rich. You're trying to stay secure. So you focus on low-risk options. Government bonds, fixed-term savings accounts, maybe some high-quality dividend stocks from very stable, established companies. You avoid anything that promises fast, high returns.
Finally, let's touch on something that's often overlooked, the connection between health and finance. Why is wellness an essential investment on a tight budget?
Because financial stress makes you sick. It's that simple. It causes anxiety, it ruins your sleep, it raises your blood pressure. And if you neglect your well-being to save a few pounds now, you are almost guaranteeing much higher medical costs later on.
So investing in your health is a financial strategy.
It's one of the best financial strategies.
Yeah. And how do you do wellness on a budget?
You get resourceful. Exercise can be free. Walking, gardening, community classes. Good nutrition comes from cooking at home with seasonal produce. And critically, you have to prioritize your mental wellness through social connection. Join a book club at the library, volunteer. Fighting isolation is vital, and it costs next to nothing.
So let's bring this all together. What are the key takeaways from this deep dive?
And first, the budget isn't a cage, it's your map. It gives you control. Second, use a structure like 70-20-10 to force prioritization. Essentials always come first. And third, be surgical. Attack your biggest expenses, housing, food, transport, to find the biggest savings.
And through it all, mindset is key.
You have to be proactive, and you have to be resilient. And please, celebrate the small wins. The 50 pounds you saved on the food shop, the subscription you canceled. That's progress. A good retirement plan has to be flexible enough to handle whatever life or the economy throws at it.
And building on that idea of control, here's a final thought for you to take away. By embracing this kind of resourcefulness, this creativity we've talked about, you can ensure that a limited income doesn't have to define the quality of your life. You have the power to organize your resources so you're not just surviving, but actually thriving.
So pick one thing from today, just one. Maybe it's drawing up that income table, or maybe it's just canceling one of those unused subscriptions. Just take that first step. It's always the most empowering one.
Thank you for diving up with us. We'll see you next time.